It's kind of like some kind of linear thing. So I'm a professor in DCU, and Rendicity is a spin-out from UCC, and effectively DCU is the Irish Centre for Cloud Computing and Commerce. And so my background is I've set up and sold 4 software companies. Some good advice if you're in here in startups. The first thing to do is don't sell those companies in a short period of time, because you just end up in a non-compete for 5 years. So that's how I ended up in DCU. No other reason, well, the north side is great, but but I ended up there because I had non-compete. That's a great place to be anyhow. But Rendicity is it's more of a court story than anything else. Phil was a postdoc with the Irish Centre for Cloud Computing, and we started working on this several years ago, and really looking at how does cloud computing disrupt different sectors. And when the guys asked us to speak today, I thought, well, maybe I'll just share how we're taking something, our strategy, which is around disruption, and then applying it in the context of our company, which in the last 3 or 4 months has won 2 or 3 different innovation awards, and we're just about to close $1 million in funding. So it's kind of that academic industry transition story. So I started, well, now this may not work. I have a small, I was thinking, no, it's not going to play. So I'm going to explain what disruptive is. So there, I had a nice video all prepared, but it doesn't work. So that's okay, because I'm going to respond quickly to this. So, so there was a nice video there, but now it's a slide. And so, what's disruptive technology? So, when we're talking about disruptive technologies, we're taking very established sectors, typically mature markets, and we're trying to enter those markets and change the value network. So we're trying to change how value is created in the market. What we're dealing with is discontinuities. So the difficulty with a startup, particularly startups that come out of academia, is we've done something that's groundbreaking, that changes how things are. And as soon as you walk out into the real world and say, we're going to change how things happen, everyone just looks at you and goes, yeah, sure. Great, you know? So the big part of it, we think we've got something that changes how people do something. And the problem with disruptive technologies is it has to impact all the incumbents in the market space, or it's not disruptive. Okay? So you take, everyone's familiar with Ryanair. Okay, so Ryanair it wasn't my video, but Ryanair is a pretty good example. Ryanair comes out in the 80s. Some of us are old enough to remember the 80s. Ryanair comes out in the 80s. They were still doing what Aer Lingus was in British Airways. They were trying to sell executive seats to go to London. That was very unsuccessful, because they were competing with everyone else. And then they saw Southwest, and they said, you know what if we drop the price and fly to secondary airports? And that's disruptive, because it's making a particular technology or service available to a large number of people whom that service was inconvenient or not considered before. Some of you don't remember back then, but you just wouldn't, business people didn't fly to London regularly because it was expensive to fly to London. And you didn't go on holidays by airplane because it was expensive to go on holidays. And the big thing was, why do they have success flying to Luton? Because there's loads of people who had relations north of London, and they used to deliver, oh, this is great, I won't take the ferry or fly over, and it's cheap. Right? And that's how, so it's disruptive. So we have 3 different types of disruptive strategies. There's a sustaining strategy, which is the typical market strategy. You're in there and you're trying to sustain the technology. You're trying to bring the similar types of technology. And these are the 2 big ones. Low-end disruption and new market. It's funny, we're talking about Microsoft here, okay? Clearly not working particularly well today. But in the context of Microsoft Office, for instance, we only use about 3% of the functionality. Right? So that means it overserves the majority of the market by 97%. Right? 97% of functionality, most people will never use. So it's a market that has lots of overserved customers. And that's where Google Docs comes into the market and says, well, people don't need all this, they only need X, Y, Z. Same with Outlook. That's why email, Gmail's taking so much market share. And then there's new market disruption, which is competing against non-consumption. So there's a huge chunk of people in the market who just don't consume a service at all. Okay? So if you take the context of Ryanair, take the analogy, now I'm going to jump from Ryanair to high performance computing in a minute, but take the analogy, there was lots of people in Ireland in the 80s who just never would get on a plane. They've never flown anywhere. And then suddenly, it's cheap, and it goes to somewhere that they want to go, they'll consider that as an option. For instance, I work on Ryanair at the moment in Mexico. That's exactly what's happening with Viva Airbus in Mexico right now. they're disrupting the bus market in Mexico. Believe it or not, people in Mexico will literally get on a bus for 24 hours and just bus around the country rather than pay like $50 to get on a flight for 20 minutes. So, how do we shape our business, our startup to be disruptive? So, first question is, are there customers at the low end of the market who would be happy to purchase a product with less but good enough performance if they could get it at a lower cost? So that's a thing. So is there a large enough people who would pay for a less advanced product? And then the second is, are there overserved customers? So are there people who would actually pay less money if it's overserved? And second, I didn't put it up here, but I have a video, is there a large number of people who cannot access this service because of skills, convenience, or finance? They can't afford it, okay? And do we impact everyone? Now, we sat around and we talked about this and said, well, right, cloud computing, it's kind of there, it's gone. So is there something in cloud computing that we could disrupt? And the reason we want to disrupt is because we have ambition. We want to scale our business and make a lot of money. Now this is a kind of it's kind of a binary ambition. Okay? We're either going to do this or we're not. And it'll be back to UCC for film. So, believe it or not, this is our problem. This is Sully. Does anyone know who Sully is? Who's Sully? You're a 4-year-old, yes? He's a monster, that's right. Now, does anybody know why Sully resonates with Irish people? No, that's a good answer. But he basically is well, he's blue. that's okay. But I like how you're rebranding. Just so you know, you're wearing a red jacket. Okay? Just in case, alright? So, what's interesting about Sully is he's actually a compute-intensive problem, believe it or not. So, Sully is, in fact, a 3D model in the first film, which was Monsters, Inc. Right, so everyone know Monsters, Inc.? First film, Monsters, Inc., he had 10,500 hairs. It's a bit like Theo. There's a lot of hair, okay? And every time he moves, the hair is moving, because I use Claire all the products or something, right? By the time I went to Monsters University, which was 18 months ago, Sully had 10.2 million hairs. Now, it's a 3D model. So this, just is what Sully looks like to the animator. You can see all the hairs. Right, now I just want to put into context, when you watch a film, it's comprised of 24 frames per second. Now the new films are actually 48 frames per second. And each frame has Sully, a background, and maybe another character. Okay? And this is really important. Every frame, every picture, he's a 3D model, we turn him into a 2D image. Right? And on the 7th most powerful supercomputer in the world, Sully still takes 29 hours to turn it from a 3D model to a 2D image. Right? So just put into context, for Monsters University, it took 100 million CPU hours to make the final image. Anyone here have daughters or seen Frozen? Right? Just if you have, not this laptop, but if you have a really good laptop, let's say if the brand new Apple Mac, maybe one of the companies that it's beautiful, it'll be some kind of accountant or graphics, something beautiful. It would take him 3.5 years to render the final edit of Frozen on that really beautiful laptop. Right? So you get the size of the problem you have here. And so, talk about a lot. So every time you see Pixar and they go and they set up and say, we're going to do a new film, they spend between 2 and 5 million on infrastructure just to render these images. Okay? So it's a big business, right? And actually, the same process, this is, believe it or not, is not a real place. That is actually a rendered image. So it's a 3D model on place. So it exists in architecture, Formula 1 racing, finite algebra. There's a whole load of processes there. And just put it into context, the high performance computing market is worth about $40 billion. And cloud computing makes up 2% of the market. Now just, this is, what I'm talking about right now is kind of just the worst thing you could say to a computer scientist. Because I'm going to say, they'll say, you can never put high performance computing in the cloud. And I'm going to go, that's exactly why we need to disrupt it. Because your thinking is, we can never do this. And my thinking is, why can't we do this? Right? So I'm all about, let's do it. So what I've identified is, look, there'll be a small market here. And that small market is still 1.5 billion for hybrid custom HPC clouds, and there's public clouds, and then there's us putting traditional HPC servers and private cloud. So even today, we know there's about 16, 17 billion on our market. And this is the beauty of it. How many players are in our market? Shag off, right? So it's beautiful because everyone thinks you cannot put HPC in the cloud. And don't give me the 5 minutes, right? Just give me 5 minutes. You spent 5 minutes. Yeah, all right. I'm being entertaining here. All right, listen. He did 14 years. You can wait 5 minutes on, right? So anyway, so we have the problem. Now, to put into context, in Ireland, and I was just in Tokyo. In Tokyo, you go to the University of Tokyo, and it's the biggest market for HPC in the world. They have 3,000 supercomputer users in one college. And they have 25 million set aside for their next investment next year. And then another 25 million for 5 years' time. In Ireland, we have about 50 to 100 users in the whole country, right? And here's the best thing is we just share resources, right? Now, Ireland is the wrong place to set up this company. But it's the right place to solve a problem, which is we want to do high performance computing in the University of Ireland. We're going to have to do it in the cloud because we can't buy the machines. And God knows now, you might get a machine that runs on water or something. Like, who knows what's going to happen, right? And don't see what the Claire Daily supercomputer is. But anyways, where we are today is traditional high-performance computing is hard to use without deep IT knowledge, expensive, even in Ireland, very inaccessible, okay, and very inflexible. You configure these machines to do one job, okay, and then when you want to reconfigure them, it's a whole load of work to reconfigure the machines. And the big thing here is the workloads, these jobs, like the study rendering. They're not designed to work in the cloud. They're designed to work in large infrastructure. What's called a tightly coupled environment. Okay? Now, what we've identified is loosely coupled jobs can work really well in the cloud. So what would happen if we designed software that allowed us on demand push these jobs into the cloud? And instead of having one machine, we just throw hundreds of machines at it. And we could do that really quickly. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? You don't think that's amazing? I think it's amazing. This is like magic sauce. Alright? Now, does everyone agree that that looks expensive? Now, an entry-level workstation is about 50 grand. Okay? So you get the idea that small to medium-sized companies who can never access this. So what actually happens in architecture is they never think about using these kind of machines to do very basic. Now, if you're Norman Foster in London, he has his own infrastructure to do all this stuff. If you're small, there's no chance. And here's the other thing is, are there lots of those people? Yes. You know how many architectural companies use 3D modeling today to design complex things? 29,000. Right? There's actually 3,700 specialist visual effects. And they all need this technology, but they cannot afford the technology. You see, only about 3% of them can afford the technology. So we have specialist animation studios who have very little cash flow, can't afford the technology, so they can't compete against the large companies. But equally, just the large studios always hit peak capacity. So they have a huge problem. Just if you're a large HPC user today, like your Pixar, or something like that, you will actually have a surge workload, so they'll have capacity for 2 times to 100 times your current workload. So they have huge demand. Now what we've done is we've designed a strategy based on non-consumers, small companies that access this type of technology. And we solve a problem for big consumers as well. We allow them to have all this burstable capacity to meet their demand. And so the key thing that we do is we have our own magic sauce. We have this software process that we have paper well done. But the key thing we do is we allow you to process Sully 100 times. Because what we do is we say to you, okay, just drop your workload here. You don't have to know anything about IT. You don't have to know anything about Rendicity. We even have special licenses with the software parts. And you don't have to have an account with Amazon or Azure or anything. And literally you take your file, you throw it into a folder, something like Microsoft Windows, but you throw it into a folder, and literally you only have to make 3 decisions. You say, how many machines do I want? You say, I want 1,000 machines. How fast do you want those processors? And remember, we're heavily integrated into Amazon, heavily integrated into Microsoft. So you pick whatever their state-of-the-art processor is you can get, right? And then you press go. And literally what our software does is it negotiates with Amazon, creates all these, your own little private center, service center and vendor farm. It installs all the software, the operating system, installs the special software you need, parallelizes your job, so it splits it into 1,000 jobs, does the job, returns the file to you, and then deletes the center when we bill you per minute. Just put it into context what we're talking about. Instead of spending 50 grand on the workstation, you spent $6. And our first client, just we reduced, they had a 29-hour turnaround, and we delivered it to it in 2 hours. Okay? And I might add a fraction of the cost. And so, very disruptive. Just put into context where we are. We have 2 competitors, direct competitors. One got bought by Google, one got bought by Microsoft, and we have to pay. Well, we have to pay for penny. So, key things what we're doing is, what the interesting thing about the cloud is it allows us to disrupt a very established market with very fixed mindsets. And so when we're looking for opportunities now, and this is what I say to other people is, you can look for markets and you can look at social media. I do a lot of big data social media mining, You can look at that, or you can look at markets where people have very fixed mindsets. And if those mindsets are intangible, they don't move a lot. And those mindsets are ones that you can disrupt, provided you have a technology that gives a significant number of benefits to a large number of clients. What's interesting about our technology is we actually design technology that impacted all the incumbents, so the large players and the small players. And so what we've done now is we've got a technology that lets small players compete with the large players without having loads of upfront capital expenditure. And we allow the large players to meet their capacity demands rapidly without buying more infrastructure. And so, I suppose, takeaway point for people is look for markets where there are large numbers of people who cannot access, do not have the skills, or it's inconvenient for them to use the technology, and then make it simple, more convenient and accessible for them. And you're on to win. Listen, thanks, Lo. Sorry about the laptop. It's not my laptop. It's bad when the organisers are just owning themselves from the laptop. It's not mine, it's covered. Listen, have a good day. And see you.